digital arena, on the app, on your smartphone, on X, YouTube, and Facebook. The Sportscast. Basketball in March.
The Donut Bag presented by The Sportscast.
The Donut Bag, hosted by Joey Bag of Donuts. And here's your host, Joey Bag of Donuts.
Welcome to the Donut Bag Podcast, part of the Sportscast Network. Usually not on at 11 a.m., but hey, why not? With me is Shane Hallam from Draft Sharks. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, Joey? We're into April now. It's draft month, so I'm excited and ready for it. Here in Pittsburgh, I won't be here for it, kind of thankfully, but it's fun that it's in our city.
You're not going to the draft.
Look, I don't want to be anywhere close to these 700,000 people that will be there. I got credentials, but it doesn't give you much. Like, I still don't know if I can make it. So my Draft Sharks, we always get together in the South somewhere for every draft and hang out. So they can, if they're going to pay for it, they can fly me to Savannah, Georgia, and I'll enjoy it from afar.
I am one of the dummies that will be going. Well, I'm tentatively scheduled to go. If there's one drop of rain or just any weather related thing, or if I hear anything, I'm not going. But right now I'm tentatively scheduled to go. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but yeah, I wonder. It's like, what does a press credential get you there? What you get to sit on the fountain or something? Like there's no room there. Like
there's I don't know where the spot it would be that you get to stand a little bit
under the stage next to the, like, yeah. What does that exactly get you?
So yeah, I was like, it's worth putting in for, but I'm good.
I'm hoping that, like, anybody not related to the draft just stays the hell away from town, and hopefully this are actually not 700,000 people. And I don't know. I'm a little scared, but we'll see how it goes.
It'll be fun. It'll be cool to see the city. You know, there's gonna be some beautiful shots on TV. I think it'll get hyped, and if it goes well, you never know. Maybe a Super Bowl someday.
That would be interesting. So what is your draft prep look like now in terms of just studying all the players?
So, I've done most of my work on all the guys that are kind of in the draftable range of the draft at this point. And then, doing fantasy football, I'm mostly focused in April on just skill positions. So quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. And this is where this next couple weeks is just diving deep into the undrafted players, players that probably aren't getting drafted. So last year, I think I had a note on 900 skill position players in the draft. So basically, I want to be ready if any player pops up a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line, that I have watched them in college. I have a note, I have a ranking, and I could say this guy was my 82nd running back, in this draft. So that's kind of this late game. Like, everything else is pretty much done. The main stuff's done. Now it's just watching those kind of practice squad, pick up after the draft kind of players, kind of deal.
So you've been studying some of these players for years.
Yeah, since high school. I mean, I drafted, Nick Singleton at Penn State. I drafted in a Devy league when he was a sophomore in high school. So, I mean, some of them I've been watching since they were 14, 15 years old. So it's kind of fun to see it finally come to fruition.
Wait, what's a Devy league?
So Devy league is where you can draft players that aren't in the NFL. Some of them just college. I'm in some that are whoever you want, as long as they're not in the NFL yet. And you kind of stash them away. And then when they get to the NFL, they move up to your fantasy roster. So we have some where you can draft kids in high school and store them away, and go from there. So it's yeah. So I have leagues, it's crazy, but I have leagues where I've drafted like Peyton Manning's son, who's in middle school, Marshall Manning. Like I've drafted him, and if he makes it, then I'll have him. He'll be on my roster.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But so I mean, because you don't just do a 2026 mock draft. You do 2027. You do how many years out do you do these mock drafts?
Yeah, I'll have a 2028 one up pretty soon after the draft, and I go full 7 rounds. So it has you might see some future ones that are like a round or whatever, but I'll do a full 7 rounder. So yeah, 2027 will be up 2028, and then I have a pretty. I don't post the 2029 draft. I used to go kind of that far in advance, but I have some rankings. I have some players that I'm watching that are coming into college for the first year. So
like back in 2024, you did a 2026 draft. Do you ever go look at that and say, "Oh man, was I accurate, or was I not even close on this stuff?"
I do. I mean, and look, you're not close, right? Like it feels good when you find players that kind of line up, but a lot of times when I'm doing it years in advance, it's just players that are going to be kind of three years and out for that draft, just to here's who, if everyone declared early, that could. And now we don't see many players declaring early for the draft. So it's almost like the 2026 mock that I did 2 years ago looks more like a 2027 mock draft with Arch Manning and Lenore Sellers and like all these players that aren't in this draft. So it's almost misleading, I guess, the year that I have on it because of players staying in school with NIL and everything for 4 or 5 years.
And that's what happened. That's why everybody said, "Oh, the 2026 draft, there's going to be so many quarterbacks," and it looks like it just all got delayed 1 year. How much has the NIL stuff changed the draft? Do you think it's changed it for the better? Because it seems like you said, nobody's declaring early anymore. Most people are just waiting an extra year or two to get that NIL money. Does that help the players that they stay in school?
I think it's benefited the players. I think from an outside perspective of evaluating the draft, I think a lot of people are not keen on it because a lot of the metrics that we use, especially in the fantasy community, to evaluate players, are outdated. Like we would look at things like breakout age. If you had a really good year at 19 years old in college, then it's like that guy's probably going to be good in the NFL. But there's a lot of players that aren't seeing the field because the guys in front of them are staying 4 or 5 years, right? So they're staying 4 or 5 years. And now if you break out at 21, it's not as bad as it used to be. I think you have to look at context and you have to look at, you look at all that. When you look at a guy like Carnell Tate, who probably be the first receiver off the board at Ohio State, I mean, how was he going to break out with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith in front of him, right? Like it wasn't going to happen. So, but I think for the development, it is good for those players. It also makes it so when a player does declare early after 3 years and is really good, you can be like, yeah, that guy's really good. If he has room to grow and he's already competing with these players that are older than him. So it makes it a lot different. I think it is going to kind of pay dividends down the line with board development. The one downside with the NIL and the transfer stuff is when you have a player that's transferring around, trying to find playing time, and has gone to 3 or 4 teams and 3 or 4 coaches and maybe isn't getting the development that they needed. There's a lot of later round to undrafted, receivers and running backs in this draft that I think have talent, but never fully developed into that talent, whether it's because they're transferring around or, injuries, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's some players that could have benefited from the old system too. So it's difficult to say, but I still believe that staying in college longer is going to benefit the college player. It's probably going to benefit the NFL because they're going to be more ready to go, even if, on the outside, you're like, what are these 23-year-olds, 22-year-olds doing? I think it's just we just have to look at it differently now.
Yeah. Yeah. So every draft is different in what positions are strong and weak. What is this draft? What is this year's draft strong and weak in?
I'll say I think this draft as a whole is much weaker than most drafts. So when you look at draft capital, like, oh, this guy went in the first round, this guy went in the second round, I think you have to temper expectations a little bit. I think the end of the first round might be a typical middle of the second round in a lot of drafts. So I don't think this draft, especially at the top, is as strong. Probably the best positions is wide receiver. I don't think we have an elite, Jamar Chase, Drake London, even Tedero McMillan last year receiver in this class, but it is pretty deep. I think we're going to get 5 in the first round and a lot in day 2. It's a deep class. I don't know if you have a true number one guy you're going to draft be the number one stud on your team, but you'll get a lot of contributors here. I think edge rusher is really good and really deep. I think we're going to see maybe upwards of 5 drafted in the first round. And again, a lot of day 2 players. Off-ball linebacker. And one of the problems with this class is I think positional value outside those 2 is pretty poor. It's like linebacker, off-ball linebacker is great. I think you can find a lot of starting linebackers in this draft. How much do teams care about that? I think safety's a really good position in this draft. Those are kind of the weaker positions ultimately. And then, in terms of positional value, teams just don't value off-ball linebacker and safety like they do other positions. Whereas when you look at the positions that are weak in the 2026 draft, quarterback, very important position. I think offensive tackle there's a lot of guys, but not difference makers. It's an important position in the NFL. Corner, I think, is solid, but not quite as deep as in past years. Important position in the NFL. So outside of like edge and receiver, I think the less important positions are strong, and that makes this class as a whole pretty weak.
So back in October, you had an article in Draft Sharks that said, if you're in Dynasty, sell your 2026 rookie picks. Do you still stand by that? That it's just it sounds like yes, because it sounds like it's a weaker class than previous years.
Yeah, if you can get 2027 first, which I've been pushing for a couple years now, and it kind of got better. Like you talked about the quarterbacks. I mean, I thought 2026 at least would have the quarterbacks, and those all got pushed back a year. Plus running back, receiver, very strong in 27. So if I don't have, a top 6 rookie pick in single quarterback leagues, I'm trying to sell for a 2027 first now. Like I think doing it now, try again after the draft, whatever you got to do. People will fall in love with these rookies. I think we'll get there, that people get hyped up about a 180-pound receiver that's drafted in the first round, or they'll get hyped up on Kenny and Sadiq, the raw tight end that's going to be go pretty highly in the first round. But like I think if you can make that move, even if it's a chip, a lottery ticket to get, we're going to have a literal generational receiver next year in the class. We're going to have a really strong and deep running back group that's putting up 1,500 yards already in the SEC. I think it's going to be worth having that extra 2027 picks. And especially if you're in a super flex league and you need a quarterback, this is not the class to get it. Next year should at least be better than 26.
That generational wide receiver pick, that's the Ohio State. I mean, they've been talking about him now for the past 3 years. So yeah.
He's Julio Jones. He's Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah.
He's going to be Julio Jones in the NFL. I mean, I think it's going to be copy paste, top 10 receiver. The past 20 years
on a team on a college that's known for wide receiver. Who have put out so many elite wide receivers in the past few years. He's better than all of them. it's absolutely insane how good he's going to be. So yeah, and I mean, where do you think he's going to go? Like right now, where do you think Smith will go? Probably at least top 5, right?
Yeah, I think it'll be top 5. I mean, again, it's going to depend on the quarterback class. If you have enough QBs that the Jets and the Cardinals, and the teams picking up the top are gonna be like, well, can't do that. But the first team that has a quarterback, I think, is gonna send that card in and write that up real quick.
Yeah, and the quarterbacks will go early, no matter what, whether they deserve it or not. Which leads to my next question. Mendoza is obviously going to be the number 1 overall pick, but do you think he deserves to be that number 1 overall pick? Do you think he's good? He lives up to the billing.
Yeah, I think he deserves to be that pick in this class. I don't think he's on the level. I don't think Fernando Mendoza is on the level of, Caleb Williams, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, some of the other top number 1 overall picks, Andrew Luck, we can go back to. He's not there, right? Kind of Cal for Mendoza. There definitely was some growing pains, especially in terms of holding the football or panicking under pressure. And that comes up on the film at Indiana too. There's definitely some weak spots with Mendoza, but just the cerebral part of the game, the toughest part to me for quarterback, he has it. Talking to opposing coaches of pre-snap, Mendoza's changing plays, he's reading the coverages correctly, he's making adjustments. You watch this film and you see, and I've made this mistake in the past with less experience at quarterbacks, and you see them thrown to the first read every time, and you're like, this guy can't go through progressions. Well, Mendoza's changing the play at the line to get the first read against the defense that he knows the defense is running. He's setting it all up. And to me, that's an NFL caliber quarterback that can read a defense before the snap, has the ability to make adjustments. They ran a lot of RPOs at Indiana, so he also had the read pass option. So he was really everything in that Indiana offense. Why they won the national championship was Mendoza mentally and what he was able to do. Does he have the strongest arm in the world? Is he slinging balls 80 yards? No, but he's accurate. The ball placement generally pretty good. And he comes up in those big moments. He can run a little bit. I think he's going to be, a 300-yard a season running quarterback every once in a while. We saw that in the national championship game. I think there's enough there. My big worries, like I said, under pressure, I think he struggles, sometimes anticipates pressure that's not there. If he makes a mistake pre-snap, and the pressure gets there, that's when we have some problems. He's only taken, I think it was 6 snaps in his entire career under center. So and Clint Kubiak, who will be his new head coach for the Raiders, loves having a fullback and playing under center. So that'll be an adjustment. And I think it's why you saw the Raiders sign Kirk Cousins to say, him and Mendoza seem like the same type of guy. Like, oh my
God, they seem like it might be that might be father son right there.
Right, like a little weird, but like that's kind of what you want, So I think it's good. They're gonna let's get him the reps under center. Let's make sure he's ready before we throw him to the wolves. And so to me, I think that's worth the number 1 overall pick in this class, especially for a team like the Raiders that really needs to rebuild and change.
That's kind of rare for a college quarterback to be that good at reading defenses and stuff. It seems like for college quarterbacks, they pretty much simplify it as much as they can and just say, hey, let's use our superior, athleticism to just win this play or game or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, Indiana's not that, right? Like Indiana can't play that way against Ohio State. They can't play that way against Miami. They don't have those players. They have some really good players, but they don't have, that caliber of athlete all the time. And so, I mean, it tells you how good I think Curt Cignetti is as a coach, because he did this James Madison too. And I'm not going to have the athletes to win. We need to beat them with football fundamentals. And that's what, Indiana did. And then building the complexities into that, even the best defenses, at some point you gotta commit to something. And, that was a big problem. So yeah, I'm excited for him. I don't think Fernando Mendoza's going to turn into a top 5 NFL quarterback. You're like, wow, this guy's Peyton Manning. I don't think he's going to get there, but could you get the 12th best quarterback in the league out of him? I think so. And I think we're seeing the past couple of years, that's good enough to win a Super Bowl. I mean, Sam Darnold won a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts won a Super Bowl. You need a team around a quarterback. How many great quarterbacks didn't make the playoffs last year because the rest of the team wasn't as good? And it seems like that's what the Raiders are trying to do.
The other quarterback that's thought to go in the first round is Ty Simpson. Is
I think I lost you. Let's see if there you go. Well, I'll talk about Ty Simpson then if I'm looks like I'm still on. So Ty Simpson, the quarterback from Alabama, if you watched his first 8 games of the season, so this guy's number 1 overall pick. It was his first year starting for Alabama, but was, the fundamentals were there, the footwork was there, he's making great decisions, getting the ball to his receivers. Again, the arm strength wasn't incredible, but the accuracy was there. It almost looked like Mendoza in a lot of ways. And then the wheels fell off against tougher competition. And Ty Simpson's a player who doesn't have a ton of starting experience. So you don't have this kind of big, wide range of film to go off of. He made 15 college starts over the past 10 years. The quarterbacks that have had 15 or fewer starts, Anthony Richardson, Mitch Trubisky, Dwayne Haskins. Those are the only 3 that were drafted in the first round. And Ty Simpson will be the 4th. It's not a good group to be in. I think he's different than those players where it's not, I'm drafting Ty Simpson because he has all the tools and he's ready to go. His father has been a 20-year college coach at UC Davis. So the footwork's there, kind of the fundamentals are there. But man, when things fall apart, when the offensive line wasn't playing as well in the second half of the season, when the receivers weren't playing as well, Ty Simpson could not elevate that team and that offense. And so you have kind of that first half of the season, this film that looks like a number 1 overall pick. In the second half of the season, you have this film that looks like a 4th round pick. And how do you decide what that means? Was he hurt? Was injury stuff? I think there's going to be 1 or 2 teams that are going to convince themselves and wave away the bad and look at the good and say, this is what we could get. We need to draft him. And I think there's going to be a handful of teams that say, we're not taking him before the round 2 with that. And so I definitely can see him going in the first round, but I think Ty Simpson needs to sit. I mean, he cannot start year 1. And I think if he does, like those players I named before, I think all of them ended up having to start in their first season, and it was a disaster.
So it could possibly be like a Jackson Dart scenario where somebody like maybe trades into the late first round to grab him and take a chance on him or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. I think, worst case, you're looking at a Will Levis kind of early round 2, like the Jets or Cardinals or whoever. That's probably where I'd be more comfortable, where, if that busts, it sucks, but it's not as bad as I moved up into round 1 and gave up these additional picks, and that pick.
Trey Lance.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable. Ty Simpson's going to have kind of a lower round 2 grade for me. I'm certainly not comfortable drafting him in the top 30.
Are there any other quarterbacks in this class that you like to see that could have potential? Because it just sounds like I don't even know if there might be any quarterbacks that go into the second round. It might be like 3rd round or later.
Yeah, I think potential is a heavy word for this quarterback class, because I think there was a lot of potential, but so many red flags on all these players. Garrett Nussmeier from LSU is my 3rd quarterback. I mean, you go back 2 years ago, this guy can develop into a first round pick, and then he had the core injury preseason this year, played through it. And I think it's such a tough thing for me as an evaluator, sitting in my house, right? I'm not on an NFL team. I'm not getting all the intel like, was Nussmeier bad because of the core injury, or is he just not that good? And that's a question. Probably the guy I like the best in terms of potential is Cole Payton, quarterback from North Dakota State. They kind of used him as like a Taysom Hill type of player for his first couple years at North Dakota State, then started a quarterback this past season and was phenomenal. North Dakota State was a rushing team. He comes in, they start throwing the ball around, and he is, 4.5 speed, big, athletic, big arm. I think he's a player, again, round 3, sit him down, let him develop, I think has something there. And then you have guys that I think are very athletic that just never put it together in college. Drew Aller from Penn State, we know just never quite hit those heights. Taylor Green from Arkansas is Anthony Richardson type of athletic ability, but can't hit the broadside of a barn. I think those are the other guys. And Carson Beck from Miami, I think, is the opposite, is kind of a backup who really long college career, you're hoping is the next Brock Purdy or something, but probably is just going to be Mason Rudolph, and it's fine. So a lot of potential. If teams, if you have a third or fourth round pick and one of those players are there, it's worth taking and stashing him if you have space on your roster.
Who's that quarterback from, I believe, Ole Miss? Is it Chambliss, that basically scratched and clawed and fought tooth and nail to stay in college for whatever reason? Do you think when he eventually does get drafted, that is a negative on him? That's like, hey, why don't you want a job, buddy? Like, what are you doing here?
I don't think teams will see it quite as much as a negative just because of his path. I mean, he played at Ferris State from 2021 to 2024. So you have, again, 1 year of major college starting experience at Ole Miss. Do you want to be Ty Simpson? Do you want to be that guy? I think a lot of teams will say if he goes back and wins the Heisman or is runner-up in the Heisman, they'll say, okay, like you got better, much better to get better in college than coming out early and being a day 2 pick. And, he's 6'1", maybe 200 pounds, maybe, like small guy, So I think for him, it was, I'm going to make more money going to Ole Miss. They'll pay me the bag and we can win a national championship. I could win a Heisman and maybe become, a top 15 pick if everything goes well. I think that's just the nature of college football nowadays. Yeah. You'd rather stay and build your stock.
Who is that guy? Was it Quinn Evers that could have gotten a lot more money if he stayed in school, but he left and he ended up being like a 6th round draft pick or something like that. So yeah.
Quinn Ewers from Texas. Yeah.
Hey, when you get a chance to make the money. So what are you going to do? Jeremiah Love is probably going to go top 5. Do you think he's worthy of that? And how does he compare to like last year's Ashton Jeanty?
I think he's worthy. I think Jeremiah Love's worthy of it in this class. Again, just being a worse year. You don't have the elite quarterback. You don't have anyone else that doesn't have questions. I think Jeremiah Love has very little questions. I rate him slightly less than Jeanty. I think most people rate him a little bit above. Some of that I think is hindsight. Jeanty having a rough first year behind that awful Raiders offensive line. People are like, oh, well, Love's better. Well, put Love in that situation, I think you get similar results. I think there's similar grades of prospects. Love maybe has a little more of that between the tackles kind of toughness. I think Jeanty had a little more of the short area quickness that I like. But I think both are difference makers with the right structure around them, which most running backs need. And I think Love's going to be a good receiver, has that home run threat, really good contact balance. So I could see a team like the Titans that says we have Cam Ward, probably threw him in the fire too early last year. New coaching staff. Let's get a running back. We have a pretty good offensive line. This isn't a Raiders situation. Let's get an elite running back and run the ball. Let's run the ball first and let Cam Ward be kind of the second threat on the team. I don't mind doing that and spending that pick on a running back if that's what you need. So would I take a running back in top 5 even in this class? Probably not in a vacuum, but I can understand you wanting, and it's going to be the question for a lot of these teams. Do you take the sure thing? Do you take a running back? Do you take an off-ball linebacker in the top 7 who you probably know is going to be really good? Or do you take an edge rusher, an offensive tackle you have some questions about, because if they hit, that's much more valuable to your team. That's going to be what teams struggle with here.
Is Love is he ranked number 1 on like in dynasty rookie rankings?
Yeah, like by far the 101 is more valuable than any other rookie pick. And I think even in Superflex, we can start 2 quarterbacks. Do you take Love or Mendoza? I think it's going to be a big decision for people. I lean Love, unless you really are desperate for a QB. But I think Love is that much better than everyone else in this class.
All right, let's talk about what the Steelers are going to do. Do you think most likely they'll take a wide receiver? I mean, I've seen guard, I've seen tackle, I've seen cornerback. Where do you think the Steelers will go with that first pick in the first round pick?
Yeah, the tough thing every year with Steelers is like it depends what's there when you're picking in the 20s. You don't get to pick. Like if if Ione, the guard from Penn State, is sitting there, I think they'll run the card up and draft them and plug them in at left guard, and you're good for a decade. Probably won't be there, but probably get sniped by the Ravens or something. But that's how it goes. I think receivers on the board, and it's a good point for slot receiver value. I mean, that's really what they need. You don't want to trot Roman Wilson out there again as a number three slot receiver ever. So, Mekhi Lemon from USC, Omar Cooper from Indiana, Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. It wouldn't surprise me if they waited. But we saw Mike McCarthy. Mekhi Lemon from USC intrigues me because we saw McCarthy draft CeeDee Lamb, who also fell because he didn't have a great 40 time, despite the production, despite being the best wide receiver in college football. Mekhi Lemon from USC kind of is the same. My comp is CeeDee Lamb for him. Like it's kind of a similar appeal, I think, to a Mike McCarthy offense. So I could certainly see that. I think offensive tackle is probably the fallback. But like the offensive tackles you can take, Caden Proctor from Alabama, Monroe Freeling from Georgia, kind of are in that Broderick Jones, like what could be mold. You want to go down that route again. Mike McCarthy has done well drafting offensive tackles. Like, I think he's better at it than Mike Tomlin was, but that's scary. I think a real possibility, and I know it's not something you've done a lot, is trading down and trying to get another 2027 pick to have the picks to move up for a quarterback next year. Right. If we saw a lot of teams, the Rams, the Browns set up 26 that way, and then it didn't work out.
Right.
I think the Steelers could be one of those teams that are, what if we move down, around essentially to pick up another first next year? I know it's not something they've typically done, but this could be the time if they feel like they're that quarterback piece away.
See that. I don't think they're going to do that just because it's in Pittsburgh, and
that would suck, right?
Well, people are like, well, what difference does that make? No, it makes a big difference. You're in your hometown, and they were planning on 2026 being the deep quarterback class, and we're going to get our quarterback, and we're going to go out there in Pittsburgh and announce with the 21st pick, the Steelers pick, our chosen quarterback for the next decade. And then that didn't happen. So I could see them trade because they have 12 picks. I could see them trading some of those picks for next year, but I just can't imagine when just the optics of going out there and saying, and I could see them trading back like, maybe 3 or 4 spots or something like that, but just it would just be a bad look if in their hometown in front of everybody. It's like, yeah, we're not really going hard for the draft this year.
No, it's fair, and they can't use all those picks as well, so they have to move. If you move back in the first, you got to move other picks. Then it could get a little bit messy. So yeah, it probably is unlikely, but I think you got to consider it depending on if you get offers. Just because I don't know, nothing to me looks great in that range for the needs if Ione is gone.
Yeah. So if they do get a wide receiver, is there any that are, it sounds like they're all like kind of at the same level. It's just what you want. I know there's one that is almost exactly like a DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman type, so you don't want him, but otherwise, like if they end up with one of these other wide receivers, would they be okay?
Yeah, like you said, I think the flavor is there for what you want, and I think this is a class where if you're drafting a guy to be the next DK Metcalf, you're probably going to be disappointed, but if you're drafting a player to be your number 2, number 3 out of the slot, and it's good. I mentioned Concepcion from Texas A&M, Omar Cooper from Indiana, Mekhi Lemon from USC is my top receiver in the class. But even, day 2, Zachariah Branch from Georgia, who was mostly used as a kind of a slot, elite returner, which the Steelers don't have a punt returner really on the roster right now. And you have a 5-star recruit who mostly at Georgia was taking screens and was really good at that. After the catch, he's elite, and the film is good. Like when I watch the film, when he does run routes and runs slants, runs ins and outs, like he's dangerous, but just not a lot of it to look at. So some potential there. Again, I don't want him as my top guy. I probably don't even want him as my number 2, but you have your top 2. They're locked in now for the Steelers. You can get a reliable number 3 that is going to be one-on-one with a nickel corner. that Antonio Williams from Clemson, same way, just really fundamentally sound, is going to move the chains on third down for you. He's going to be open, like, a guy Aaron Rodgers would love. So Skylar Bell from UConn could be similar at 1,300 yards at UConn, and ran in the 4.4s. Like, there's a lot of the types of players the Steelers could take. So that's why I think round one will depend on value, but they could wait with those additional day 2 picks, and I think you can find a slot receiver who matches up here.
See, I think that's why they're going to go with wide receiver, because you have your 2 top guys, and then really you have nothing. And Mike McCarthy likes to run the 11 personnel, so you need more wide receivers just for bodies. So I think they're probably going to go wide receiver, but we'll see. I mean, and like you said, you have no idea. Like the year they drafted David DeCastro, I think they had no thought that he would fall to them. But it's like,
You're right,
you gotta take him. It's like, and it sounds like that guard from Penn State is just as good. He's just a plug and play, awesome guard. It's like, but just I can see a lot of teams say it's like, why take a guard in the first round? It's because he's good. That's why. So we'll see.
Yeah, how many teams go back and look at that DeCastro draft? How many teams would have wished they had drafted David DeCastro, right, instead of who they took?
I mean, it's just so funny how when you go look at you look at previous drafts, how many misses there are, and it's just funny that it's just not an exact science at all. And they do everything they can to try to make it an exact science and try to evaluate as much as they can, and they still get it wrong. I think it's just human nature. It's just you can't. It's like when you do job interviews. Anybody that's ever done a job interview, you have no idea that person's actually going to be good, depending, just by how they are in a job interview.
Yeah, and there's so many factors to success and failure of a player, and like we talked about. I mean, do you draft a player because of what they could be, what they could turn into, or you draft what they are? If you sit here in the 2026 draft and just draft players for what they are, I know what they are, and I think you can come away with a really good draft that looks good in 5 years. But it's gonna be, you drafted a slot receiver, you drafted an off-ball linebacker, you drafted a safety, you drafted a guard. It's going to be positions that don't make a lot of money in the NFL, right? Even for the guys that are really good. So I think that's going to be the big decision for the Steelers, for other teams. Do you take a flashy potential franchise left tackle who's got some problems, or do I draft the guard that's going to start for me probably for, get a second contract, and I know he's going to start for a while and be solid. So it's a tough thing. I think there's a lot of people that say, well, you never know anything in the draft. We've had safe players that have busted. Like anyone can bust. So take the chance. Or you have people that say, don't take the chance. Like, what a Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech is a small off-ball linebacker, but he's going to be good. He's going to be a starter. He's going to get 100 tackles a year. Just take him. You could do that. Like, I think it's going to be a really interesting draft in terms of strategy for every single team.
Yep. So where can people find you, follow you, and get more of your work?
Yeah, check out draftsharks.com. We have a free rookie guide up there if you're interested in the skill position players. We're updating it this week, so we'll go up to 75 skill position profiles on there. It's just put in your email and it'll get emailed to you for free. We have rookie profiles on a ton of players. You can check out my 7-round mock draft. I'll have a new one the week of the draft as well. And yeah, if you're into fantasy football, you can sign up at draftsharks.com and help us, and we can help you win your league.
That's regular fantasy football, dynasty, Devy, whatever the heck that is.
Any league you have, you actually can sync right to our system. It'll read your scoring, read the positions of players, give you a custom cheat sheet and draft board based on your scoring in league. You can run mock drafts on there, so you can be ready for your draft. Then even when you're in your live draft, like, we have a tool that'll tell you who to take if that's what you want. We'll tell you, we'll give you the top 10 options, so really easy. And this year we're implementing some really new cool things. Like, if a guy gets hurt and is declared out on Sunday, we'll swap him out for you. You don't have to do anything. So you don't have to worry about being up and looking at the phone, 10 minutes before the game starts and stuff like that. So we're going to be rolling out some cool features this summer.
Wait, so you're handling Wait, you're managing people's lineups?
If you can opt in if you want to, but you can basically say like, hey, on Sunday, check my lineup. If I have a guy, I think George Kittle last year like got declared out surprisingly an hour before the games. We'll swap him out for the next best guy in our rankings that's on your bench. You can literally click a button on our site and it'll set your lineup to our suggested optimum lineup. So you don't have to. It's gonna be a lifesaver for me because I hate setting lineups multiple times every week. So I'm gonna let Draft Sharks just do it, and that's great.
I have like 10 leagues I'm in during the season, so that would be a very useful if I could just somebody just handles that for me, because that's the one of the most annoying things is like, who am I actually going to start? So yeah, that's really cool. Hey, thanks so much. Always good to talk to you. I don't think there's anybody that knows these players or analyzes them more than you. I know you're busy as like heck now, so thanks for coming on.
No, I always appreciate coming on, Joe. So thanks for having me, man. Always a blast.
All right, I'll see you.
See you.